Still the best intro song of any podcast I've ever heard, man. It gets me pumped up every time. Welcome to the Vol Bros. My name is Evan. This is my brother Rustin, and we are two Vol Bros who are actually bros in real life. And we have a really fun show this evening because if you'll recall, a few episodes ago, the only 10 you see on YouTube was commenting on our podcast episode, and she was asking some just fantastic questions. So we asked her, we said, well, we would do a whole show of your questions if you would send them to us, and she did, and so we really appreciate that. She emailed a whole list to us of baseballs, basketball questions, and some football questions. So tonight we're going to answer the football questions that the only 10 you see had submitted, and by all means, if you have questions as you're watching this, you're welcome to put them in the comments, and we'll be happy to show them on air. So
and chime in with your responses too. If the questions, I love the questions. I love that we're doing this. So if you have an answer different from ours, feel free to throw that in the comments also.
100%. Absolutely. So the first question, and this is a really intriguing one in my opinion. Do you ever see Josh Heupel making the jump to the NFL, especially with the exhaustive year-round college recruitment? Rustin, would you like to answer first, or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll take it. And I think the biggest answer I would give is something Joey Halzle actually said the other day. Well, I'll add two things. So first of all, Josh Heupel has young kids. Josh Heupel loves Knoxville. He loves the consistency for his family. Even though you are in a recruiting grind, which is actually getting worse, it's not getting better. They keep changing the rules, and now I don't know if you saw, now unofficial visits and official visits are no longer a thing. Kids can take as many official visits as they want, which means
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they just changed that policy for the fall, which means essentially every visit becomes an official visit, which means coaches are now going to be on 24/7, which why the NCAA thought that was a good idea, I have no idea, because that's definitely a terrible decision. But Josh
Heupel, so everybody
loves...
understands that, they used to be limited to 5 official visits. That's it. Well, now they're going to be taking 25 official visits.
Yeah. And from a coaching staff perspective, if a kid was there on an unofficial visit, you didn't have to be as involved with them. If it was an official visit, you were extremely involved. So now that all those guardrails are gone, essentially that means the coaches are going to have to be on call every weekend. So it's just a horrible decision by the NCAA. So I do think he loves the consistency of Knoxville, the consistency for his family, the family environment that he's created in Knoxville among his staff. But I think one thing that is probably huge is something Joey Halzle said this week. He said, anytime you're a coach on this staff, you have a voice. And Josh Heupel actually gets angry if you don't use your voice. And everybody is expected to contribute and participate in decision making. And that just stood out to me because that is not normal. There are so many organizations where the head coach is the head coach, Jeremy Pruitt, and
That's what I was thinking.
and no one else gets a say on anything. And for the first year offensive coordinator who has been in that meeting room and has been a part of what Josh Heupel's done for a long time, to say publicly, it's all of us. We all have a voice, and he actually gets angry if we don't use it. That tells me that he has built a culture among his staff where those guys are going to stay around. They're going to be there. They're not going anywhere. They enjoy working together. And, the NFL is a cutthroat league. Yeah, you can make a lot of money fast, but if you don't win immediately, you can be fired fast too. And Josh Heupel has created a culture there that coaches want to be a part of. They enjoy coming to work every day. People talk about how the kids hang out in the football building. They're always in the football offices. It's a good place to be. And he's got complete support from the administration. So, if any NFL team ever came calling and threw a bunch of money at him, I can't remember who was saying it the other day. I heard somebody talking about the other day. There is more money flowing into the University of Tennessee right now than any time in the last 25 years. So if some NFL team came calling and threw a bunch of money at him, we can match it. And so I don't have any concern at all about him jumping to the NFL. He's got an amazing situation. He's got a great staff around him. They all like each other, and he has young kids, and they love Knoxville. I don't see it.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I think you're exactly right in that the culture he has created in Knoxville, I think he enjoys being in Knoxville. The only thing that concerns me is his competitiveness. And all off season long, all we've heard is, well, his offense, it's a gimmick. It wouldn't work. And his players, they can't translate well to the NFL because it's a gimmicky kind of thing. The only thing that concerns me is he's just competitive enough that he might be like, all right, let's prove it. And and somebody gives him a chance and he moves on just to prove that it really would work. I think that what you said, though, would outweigh that desire. I think he understands the situation he has in Knoxville. And I think he appreciates the fact that he's got a really good situation going. I mean, my goodness, there's probably more hype around the team. That's actually a question that was given to us one time that we need to do a whole episode on was, is this the most hype surrounding a Tennessee football team preseason since the early 2000s? That kind of thing, we need to do a whole episode just on that one question. But
and also, if you look around the athletic department as a whole, I mean, I can't remember a time when all of these coaches got along so incredibly well. We talked about it a couple of months ago. He calls Rick Barnes and says, "Hey, I need to spend some time with my son. Can we get in the gym?" And Rick Barnes lets Heupel and his son go in the gym and shoot around for a while just so he can spend time with him. Everybody knows he and Tony Vitello are extremely close. And actually, they have a recruit right now out of St. Louis, Missouri, that they probably should not have been in on, and they're in the final three on because of Tony Vitello and his connections in the St. Louis area, who brought that kid into a deeper relationship with the football staff, and now they're a finalist, and a lot of people think they're going to get this kid. That 2 months ago they weren't even a blip on the radar with. So there's just so many connections in that athletic department. I can't fathom anyone wanting to leave that group right now.
Yeah, I understand that totally. I think that what you said earlier is also very true, and Josh knows it to be true, in that if a team comes and throws a big offer at him, I am 100% confident Danny White would make sure that Tennessee could at minimum match whatever offer that is. And Josh Heupel knows that too. He knows that they can match whatever's given. So I think this is a great question. And I think that it is an intriguing question considering how competitive Josh Heupel is. But I also think that he understands, first of all, he loves college football. And he loves the coaching element of college football. And I don't think he'd be willing to give that up to move on.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, you mentioned his competitiveness. He hasn't won a national championship. And, the ultimate competitive nature in a college coach is, I want to be number one. So I don't think this is even a conversation until he wins a national championship at the college level. I don't think he would consider anything until he gets to that place.
Yeah. Rebecca and Company Houndstooth, welcome. We're glad you're with us. It's always fun having her with us. And she said Heupel is king in Knoxville. I can't imagine him going here. Now, that's very true. I highly doubt Josh Heupel pays for many meals anytime he goes out to eat in Knoxville right now. That's pretty sweet gig there.
So this past weekend, he's not just king in Knoxville; he's king everywhere. So his son plays travel baseball, his youngest. And this past weekend, he was at a tournament that my son was playing in also. And Josh Heupel pretty much spent the whole weekend taking pictures with fans.
Yeah.
Um, his son was playing. He played 4 or 5 games this weekend, and I hope he got to watch a little bit of it because he pretty much just stood around taking pictures with everybody that walked by.
Yep. People say, "Do you know who you are?"
And it was cool. It was cool because he just wanted to be dad. Like he was dressed so incognito. He was wearing a typical cap. It didn't say Tennessee on it. He was wearing a black hoodie that didn't say Tennessee on it. He was wearing like athletic shorts that didn't say Tennessee on it. Like he was trying so badly to blend in and just be a dad watching his son play baseball, but there were so many Tennessee fans around, it just wasn't possible. Like, and he was incredibly gracious. Every person that walked up, he talked to, he took a picture with. I mean, it was amazing. But
That's
you
cool.
know, he didn't get to be dad.
Mr. Jones, I see your comment there, your question. That's let's see. Let me go back to it here. So Mr. Jones has asked a question. I'm going to save that for the end because I think that's a good question. So we'll come back to that. He said Tennessee has a hype-powered offense, and the hype is real. I agree, 100%. The hype is very real right now. Our next question from the only 10 you see. She said, "How confident can we be in Jalen McCullough? Is this a Trayvon Flowers situation where we're choosing experience over talent and athleticism? Or is Jalen McCullough a significant enough has he had a significant enough improvement from last year?" So I'm going to go first on this one. Oh, I hope. That's my answer. I hope he's had a huge improvement since last year because we saw that with Trayvon Flowers. He had a huge jump. We saw that with Theo Jackson. He had a huge jump in his last year, probably even more so with Theo Jackson. I sincerely hope we see that with Jalen McCullough because with his experience and his understanding of offenses, I mean, he could be a tremendous asset back there. But at the same time, he does have to be athletic enough to play back there consistently. And there were occasions last year where that kind of manifested and it wasn't ideal. So hopefully that changes this year. I sincerely hope, even for his sake, that we see like a Theo Jackson type jump in his performance where he ends up getting drafted. Because Theo, man, he just exploded onto the scene 2 years ago in his last year.
Yeah.
So I really hope that happens with Jalen as well. What do you think?
So I've always liked Tank. I've always thought he's a good player. I like how he comes up and strikes people. I think he's great against the run. I've always kind of wondered, is Tank really an inconsistent safety, or are our corners so bad that he has to cover for them more than he should and it gets him out of position?
That's a fair question.
So Willie Martinez.
We'll know that this year.
Yeah. So Willie Martinez is an excellent defensive backs coach. He's been doing it his whole life. He's known around the world as being a DB expert, and he's coached a lot of guys that are still playing in the NFL.
Yeah, right now, Emmanuel Mosley, Alontae Taylor, Theo Jackson.
Right. Well, and then go back to his Georgia days. I mean, he has guys that he coached at Georgia that are still in the NFL 10, 12 years later. So I have to think that Willie Martinez didn't get stupid overnight and he's still a really good coach. And I think what you saw in Theo Jackson was a guy who really listened well to Willie Martinez and figured out how to play at a high level with the knowledge that Willie was giving him. Our corners this past year were just awful. And I that puts pressure on somebody. And it's, in their system, I almost wonder because the star for them, which was Tamarion McDonald, he walks down so much as a linebacker. There's not a whole lot of pressure put on him by the corners, so it almost has to go to the safeties. And I just wonder how much of Tank this past year was trying to make up for everybody else's mistakes and getting out of position in the process. And so I'm excited to see. I think Gabe Judy Lawley and Danico Slaughter are going to make Tank McCullough a lot better.
I think that's a very fair assessment. And there's no doubt that our cornerbacks will be improved this year. No doubt about it. I mean, people say, well, it can't get much worse. Well, I get it. Yeah, absolutely. But Gabe Judy Lawley, that is a tremendous pickup over the offseason. That was huge. That was absolutely huge.
Yeah. Just for clarity's sake, if any of you saw a depth chart that got posted this past week from someone who pretended like they really, really knew what they were talking about, if you ever see a depth chart before this fall that doesn't have Gabe Judy Lawley starting, delete it. Unfollow
for real. Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't have Gabe Judy Lawley starting has no idea what they are talking about. That is, if you want to go to Vegas right now and place a bet on something that is a 100% guarantee, and you're not the Alabama baseball coach, you need to go place a bet on Gabe Judy Lawley as a starting corner at UT this fall. The only thing that will keep him from starting every game at corner is injury. That is
asteroid strike.
Foregone conclusion.
If we get hit by an asteroid, that might do it too. But that's pretty much the only other option that could prevent him from. That's a fair assessment. I
couldn't believe that. I saw this depth chart get circulated all over the place this past week, and this guy swore up and down that he knew what he was talking about, and he had Kamal Hadden and Danico Slaughter starting at corner, and I'm like, there is no earthly way.
No way. Yep, no way. Let's see the next question. Do you think we should continue to try Mincy at right tackle when he seems very solid at left tackle? Would it not be better to settle him where he's comfortable and narrow our search to right tackle only? That's a fair question. Go ahead. I'll answer after you.
So I think it's already decided. I think that they have found their starting five, and I think it's going to surprise some people. I don't think trying Mincy at right tackle is a question mark anymore. I think he is the right tackle. Everything I'm hearing is Ollie Lane has made massive progress, and they believe he's their starting left guard. And John Campbell has been pretty much exclusively been working out at left tackle. So it looks like the five starters are going to be John Campbell at left tackle, Ollie Lane at left guard, Cooper Mays at center, Javontes Spraggins at right guard, and Gerald Mincy at right tackle. And Jeremiah Crawford is learning both tackle spots. He's going to provide depth in both places. And Andre Carrick is learning both guard spots, and he's going to provide depth at both guards. Again, the one thing that's a little concerning, I'm still hearing the same two names getting all the backup snaps at center. Addison Nichols and the true freshman. Oh, I'm blanking. Who's the other one? Yes. So it sounds like the starters are set. Glenn Ellerby has found his five, and he's already working because for those of you who don't know, it used to be that they didn't get a whole, like in the off season, they were pretty much only with the strength staff, and they did everything with the strength staff, and the coaches weren't allowed to be there. Well, that's all changed. And so now they have all these hours every week when they're allowed to do conditioning while the coaches are present. And conditioning might look like we're going to line up in our starting units and we're going to run a 10-yard sprint after we run this play. And so
it's good conditioning.
Yes. Very realistic. And so, or we're going to get our starting 11 defensive players out there and we're going to throw a ball to the right sideline and we're all going to sprint to it. That can be conditioning. And so conditioning very much looks like practice now. And so, after a weight room workout. So everything I'm hearing is the first 5 on the offensive line are the 5 we just said. So it'll be interesting to see if that shakes out over the summer, if they get in the fall and somebody, shows up and decides to take a job away from somebody. But right now, it sounds like the offensive line is set.
So that leads into our next question. It was the concern here that she mentions is who's going to be a right tackle, all that kind of thing. So it's a fair question. She said, how much success should we realistically expect from Joe Milton if there are, offensive line positions that are still being shuffled around?
I'm not worried about the offensive line. Like I think we've got the most depth on the line we've had in 6, 7, 8 years. I'd never had any concerns about the offensive line. And the biggest reason I don't have any concerns is Glenn Ellerbe is one of the best offensive line coaches in America. Let's not forget that the University of Georgia tried to lure Glenn Ellerbe away. Kirby Smart just won 2 national championships. If he wants your offensive line coach, you got a stinking good offensive line coach. So I'm not worried about the offensive line. I think they're going to be fine. The only position on the entire field, offense or defense, that I have concerns about is linebacker. And it's not the starters, it's the depth. Everything else, I think we're in really good shape.
All right. So interesting question here. Would it be reasonable to replace Joe Milton with Nico if the offensive line does struggle, since he's more elusive? Or is that too high risk of potential injury to Nico to put him in there? I don't think that's going to be an issue personally. Because Joe, we've mentioned this before about Anthony Richardson and all the records that Anthony Richardson broke at the combine. Well, the broad jump, the high jump, all those records, Joe Milton's going to break all those next year. Now, is Anthony Richardson faster than Joe Milton? Yeah, he sure is. So he's not quite as elusive as Anthony Richardson, but he's also a house. And so it's hard to bring that dude down. And, one thing we've seen in the past is Joe doesn't receive contact. He initiates contact, even when he's running. And quite honestly, that might be one thing that Halsey's talking about this off season.
I don't think we're talking about
off season. Yeah. This off season during the spring. There we go. He might be telling Joe, like, Joe, man, sometimes you just got to slide, bro. like stop lowering your shoulder into people, because it might not work out one time for you to do that. So that might be one thing that he has to tell him.
But let's also not forget, I don't think Joe's going to get touched very often, because
I hope not.
You've got 4 or 5 dudes on the perimeter in Dante Thornton, Squirrel White, Ramel Keaton, Jacob Warren, McAllen Castles, Brew McCoy. So actually 6 or 7 dudes on the perimeter that are all going to occupy defenders. You've got 5 offensive linemen that are going to do a good job, because Glenn Ellerbe is a really good coach, and there's some guys up there. And oh, by the way, there's Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson, and Cam Seldon all in the backfield. Who's gonna take Joe? I mean, they can't. I would predict we're going to be shocked at how many times this year Joe Milton runs for 10, 12, 15 yards, and there's not a defender in sight. Because we ran the zone read and they covered absolutely everybody else, and he pulled that thing and there's nobody left.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, he could run 10, 12 yards and just jog out of bounds and get a first down and never be touched. Sure. I think we're going to see that more than people probably realize. Because
there's too many people to account for on the field.
Right. If they don't, we're going to see those 4 running backs popping 40, 50, 60-yard runs, because there's nobody to account for them.
Absolutely. Papa John, great question here. Welcome, Papa John. That's the first time I've seen that name. I like your profile photo there. He said, Why are you so sure he'll break records? We haven't seen enough of him consistently. I get that on the field. But what I was specifically referring to in that particular situation was the NFL Combine. This year, Anthony Richardson broke almost every single record for quarterbacks at the Combine that had ever been set. He is the broad jump, the high jump, I think the 40. He
Yep.
might not have beaten Lamar Jackson. I can't remember, but he's setting all these records left and right, left and right. Well, Joe Milton, as far as the ability to jump, there will not be another quarterback, maybe in a long, long time. I'm not gonna say ever, but in a long, long time, that's going to be able to do what Joe does in those. It's John Hill. Hey, John. Welcome, Papa John. Changed from John Hill. So yeah, I mean, that's specifically referring to, like, Joe warms up pregame by doing standing backflips in the corner of the end zone.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy what he can do with his vertical. So I'm very confident that Joe will break both the high jump and the broad jump records for quarterbacks of the NFL Combine next year. And that's why I feel so confident we're going to see the exact same thing happen for Joe that happened with Anthony Richardson this year. Anthony did not have a great season on the field, if we're totally honest here. He didn't. Now, he did against Tennessee, but overall, he didn't have that great of a season. However, he can throw the ball really far, and his measurables are incredible.
Speaking of throwing it really far, did you see the video about 3 weeks ago of Joe Milton on 2 knees at the 50-yard line hitting the upright with a pass?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I know we sound like a broken record. I coached quarterbacks for 11 years. My best quarterback, who was a 3-time All-State high school quarterback, threw the ball 56 yards in the air, and everybody thought he had a strong arm. Joe Milton is hitting the crossbar, so he's throwing with accuracy from his knees from the 50-yard line. Like,
yeah, the quarterback you were referencing was getting a good crow hop in there.
Right. Well, and he ended up playing Division I football. I mean, this was a good player. Joe Milton is throwing the ball 60 yards in the air from his knees.
Yeah.
Like,
it's crazy.
Yeah. He is a physical freak, and NFL scouts are going to be losing their minds over him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about what happened this year with Anthony Richardson and Will Levis and their arm strength. There's the whole 2 weeks leading into the combine. They're like, man, their arms are so strong and all this kind of stuff. Joe Milton's that's going to be the talk of ESPN for a month leading into the combine, or probably about 2 weeks leading in and 2 weeks after the combine is going to be how strong Joe Milton's arm is. And people are going to be talking about how it's just a circus almost to watch him throw the ball that far. Like, who can do that?
And then he's going to do the broad jump, and then he's going to do the 3-cone shuttle, and then he's going to do the high jump. And they're not even going to care what he runs in the 40, because once he does all that, he will be a top 5 pick.
Yep. They're going to see it. He's going to break Anthony Richardson's high jump or vertical record. And then he's going to break the long jump record. And they're going to be like, well, he can throw the ball out of the stadium and he can jump out of the stadium as well. So we'll just give him, we'll give him a shot here. That's what's going to happen.
And by the way, he's 6'5", 240.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the exact same thing we saw happen with Anthony Richardson this year. That's going to happen with Joe Milton. Mr. Jones said Joe Milton is the size of Derrick Henry at quarterback.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
He's actually good. Taller, same weight and taller.
Yep. Absolutely. Oh yeah. Mr. Jones said Milton walks in the NFL and day one was strong. Absolutely. Joe Milton has the strongest arm in the NFL right now. If he were to get on a team, I think it was Mr. Jones who said a minute ago. Yeah, he said he can throw a Hail Mary into the end zone from the opposite 1-yard line. He could might get pretty close, actually, is what's wild. I mean, he can definitely throw it probably from the 10. He can definitely do it.
So he jokingly asked about Joe Milton throwing a baseball and being a relief pitcher. I guarantee you, once he starts throwing that football at the combine, there's going to be a major league team. There's 32 rounds in the Major League Baseball draft. Those last 2 rounds, they pick. It's a joke. They pick whoever, they have fun with it. I guarantee you somebody's going to pick him. Just for the opportunity to have him show up, throw a bullpen. They'll clock him at 100 plus, just to get the ratings and show off what he can do. Because anybody who can throw a football as far and as hard as he can, I guarantee you they can throw a baseball in the upper 90s, low hundreds. It's just like John Elway.
Yep, absolutely. So our next question. No, this is the last question from the only 10 you see. So that was a long question, so it's broken up into 2 lower thirds here. If worst case scenario, we incur a bowl ban from the NCAA, how impactful do you think that will be with recruits? Can a program with resources like Tennessee lessen the impact on recruiting by potentially offering greater NIL contributions? It's a really great question. I do think that, so I think this actually opens up a whole new ball game that the NCAA is going to have to start thinking about. And the real question here is, at what point does NCAA reach end? And what I mean by that is, can the NCAA start can they start regulating NIL contributions? Because if they try to get into that niche, which, hey, that they're talking about it, like they're talking about the words are getting this thing under control. That's what they're saying. If
they also
start
asked Congress to help, so the odds of this working out are pretty slim.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Like they've legit talked about getting politicians involved in trying to regulate NIL stuff in college athletics. So, I mean, if that stuff starts happening, who knows what's going to happen? I think that's the real issue here is, go ahead. Well, I mean, I think that's the real issue here is it's almost impossible to answer this question because there's no telling what's going to happen over the next 2 years in college athletics. If the NCAA starts getting politicians involved, will the Power 5 schools say, all right, let's do our own thing and start their own new organization? Is that even possible to happen? I think it could be. If all of a sudden we literally start having governmental, reach into NIL offerings at schools, I mean, players aren't going to like that for sure. So it's difficult. I mean, under the current system, without that overreach into NIL stuff, I think Tennessee they could find the money. I'll put it that way, to soften the blow. I'll put it that way. And I think the NCAA knows that too.
So if there were to be some kind of bowl ban, I don't think it would hurt recruiting, because of how advanced Tennessee is in the NIL program. The only thing that would hurt recruiting is if they restricted scholarships. If coaches had to go back and retroactively shorten their roster, that's about the only way. But I preface all that with Danny White walked into the hearings with Greg Sankey.
That's what Mr. Jones was just saying on the comments as well.
When the commissioner of the SEC shows up to your NCAA hearing with you, that's a really good sign. Because for those of you who aren't aware, the most powerful man in all of college sports is Greg Sankey. And he is more powerful than the NCAA. The SEC financially is the tail that wags the dog. And whatever Greg Sankey wants, Greg Sankey gets.
Money talks.
Yeah. The NCAA bows down to whatever he wants. And the other conferences know that too. If you talk to people in college sports, they'll all tell you, if Greg Sankey wants it, it's going to happen. So as soon as everyone saw him walk in that meeting with Danny White, everybody should have felt very confident that Tennessee's going to be just fine.
Kudos to Danny White in that regard. Personally, I don't foresee, if John Curry were still as the AD when this was going on, I don't foresee Greg showing up with John Curry.
No.
So that's Danny. That's him, and that's why he was an absolutely tremendous hire. And I hope he never leaves, because he is killing it right now, man. He's doing awesome. Mr. Jones said, I think the SEC will break away from the NCAA eventually. It could. If politicians start getting involved in trying to control where money goes, absolutely. You're going to see people start being like, you know what? We can do our own thing. I think you'll see all the Power 5 schools join together and start their own deal if that starts happening, because nobody wants to deal with that. Now, earlier in the show, go ahead.
I think I would add one thing. I think it's important to note that the NCAA knows that the SEC has the money and the power to break away, and they're not stupid. They don't want to lose $1 billion organization, which is why I say Greg Sankey's the most powerful man in sports. Whatever he ends up, whatever the negotiation is to keep the SEC from splitting from the NCAA, it will happen. The NCAA is not going to lose that money. The other thing I would say, the one redeeming quality about Congress getting involved with the NIL is who's leading the charge. The person leading the task force for Congress is Tommy Tuberville. So we have the former head football coach at Auburn, who is now Senator Tuberville, is the person leading the task force for how Congress might get involved with NIL. So if there was anybody in Congress who could take a rational approach to NIL and actually understand the issues that exist, it's Tommy Tuberville. If anybody else in Congress gets involved in this conversation, it's going to be a dumpster fire.
I was literally just about to say dumpster fire.
Because they are clueless. Yeah. And if any of you want to hear Tommy Tuberville's kind of take on everything, he was actually on the Mac and Cube show about 3 weeks ago, and talked about what his task force is doing. And he was very candid. And he said, in the Senate, which is where he is, that they are taking this task force very seriously, and he's gotten great support, and they're actually learning the issues, and that everything's been pretty positive. But then he said, but the House doesn't care, and the House thinks it's a big joke, and the House has been a major problem. And he was very candid and said, until the House of Representatives decides they actually want to pay attention and hear what they're being told, that they're not going to get anything done. So it made me feel good that somebody who was that candid on a public forum was actually leading this thing. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't get better and Congress realizes that they can't do anything with it, the person in charge is going to say, we can't do anything with this and we need to walk away. And then it'll go back to the NCAA. It'll go back to the athletic directors. And the people who are actually dealing with it on a daily basis will be forced to figure out how they're going to regulate it. So I think at the end of the day, it's actually going to end up being a huge positive that Tommy Tuberville's leading that charge, because one of two things is going to happen. Either Congress is going to take a rational approach and they're going to come up with good policy to help oversee this, or they're going to push it back to the ADs and say, y'all figure it out. At which case, the Power 5 schools are going to dominate everything, which is already happening anyway.
So, Mr. Jones, Danny, Orange and White, I see what you did there. He said Tennessee cooperated with the NCAA, so if they tried to overpunish the Vols, no team will ever cooperate with them again. Yeah, that's fair. We see that with LSU. LSU a couple of years ago was like, no, we're not. Who cares? And eventually, it caught up with them a little bit, but Will Wade's no longer there. But we've seen teams take that approach for sure.
I don't know that
So
I would
earlier,
say. I don't know that I would say if NCAA punishes Tennessee, then no team will ever cooperate with them again. There's a lot of examples the last 3 years of schools that cooperated with the NCAA and then got smacked for it. So sometimes you're actually better not to cooperate with the NCAA.
earlier in the show, Mr. Jones asked this question: can Joe Milton compete for the Heisman? Yes, unequivocally, yes. The reason being is because Josh Heupel is his coach. Listen, when Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, every year, one of the best quarterbacks in the country was signed with Oklahoma because they knew they were stepping into a situation where they were walking into potential Heisman candidacy immediately. I mean, my goodness, Baker Mayfield, all that, just back Kyler Murray, back to back to back to back. People were in Jalen Hurts, back to back to back to back to back to back to back. People are in the Heisman talk from the start of the season all year long. Some of them won, some didn't. But that's, now people know he's at USC. So that's probably going to be happening there. But now people are seeing what's happening in Tennessee. And they saw Hendon Hooker. If he hadn't gotten hurt at South Carolina, he would have won the Heisman, I'm convinced. They know you're walking into a system that is set up for you to win the Heisman. I mean, bottom line. Now this is a big deal too. It's in the Eastern time zone, not the Western time or Pacific time zone. That's a tough deal and I know somebody from USC just won it. I get that. But it is more difficult for someone in the Pacific time zone to win the Heisman than someone in the Eastern time zone, because if they're playing at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, voters on the Eastern time zone are in bed asleep. And so then they have to go back and watch the games in the future. And do they always do that? I don't know. It worked for him this year. I don't think it would have worked for him if Hendon Hooker hadn't gotten hurt. But you're playing in the SEC, so maximum visibility there. You're playing in the Eastern time zone, maximum visibility there. And you're playing in an offense that's going to let you put up video game numbers if you take care of the ball. Bottom line, Hendon Hooker took care of the ball. He put up video game numbers. So 100%, I think anybody who steps in to this offense that can run it efficiently, yeah, you're stepping into a situation where you can certainly win the Heisman. And that's not going to change because wide receivers know what kind of offense this is. They want to come here. So you're going to have people to throw the ball to. And wide receivers know that quarterbacks want to come here, i.e. Nico. Hang on, I can do it. Maleava. That he knows. They all know. You go there, you're going to throw the ball all over the yard. Like Steve Spurrier said, we're going to throw the ball around the yard a little bit. I mean, they know that. And so they know that they're going to be able to put up numbers.
Yeah, I would give you 11 reasons why Joe Milton is going to win the Heisman. Dylan Sampson, Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, Cam Seldon, Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, Jacob Warren, McCallan Castles, Ramel Keaton, and Josh Heupel. When you've got an offensive genius calling plays and you're surrounded by those 10 weapons, and they are weapons. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the wealth of riches around him. You're going to put up huge numbers. Like it's impossible not to. And, let's be honest, the Heisman campaign has become who can put up the most gaudy numbers, and he's going to put up gaudy numbers. And he's not, like, it's not going to be hard. And the biggest thing that's in his favor, the front half of our schedule isn't that difficult. Like the back half of the schedule is probably tougher than the front half. And so he's going to get he's going to get a lot of early national attention, putting up massive numbers, and it's going to create a snowball effect.
Especially if he goes into Gainesville and puts up big numbers there.
I'm not worried about that one. I may be crazy, but I'm not convinced. I'm more worried about South Carolina than Florida.
Did you see where Vegas put out like their over-unders for win totals? I think it was Vegas that put it out. And Florida's was it was either 4.5 or no, it's 5.5 games. I was like, yikes.
And
But
honestly,
no joke. Well, hey, seriously, I was looking at their schedule and I was like, they might not win more than 4 games.
yeah,
I mean, like, seriously.
if they don't figure out how to make one of these awful quarterbacks they have halfway functional, I think they could easily go 4-8.
Yeah. I mean, it's very possible. Very possible. There was a lot of Titans talk in the comments there for a little bit.
Mhm.
So Mr. Jones said that
Everybody's
Titans,
still salty about Will Levis.
yep. Hey, if you want to see a video about that, so we interviewed Charlie Burris about that very thing last Friday. Is it today Friday? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Today's Thursday. Yeah.
Today's Thursday.
So
All day long.
Yeah. So 6 days ago, we interviewed Charlie Burris about that, and you can find that on our podcast, and we talked all about that. The reaction in Nashville to the Will Levis draft pick. So very interesting takes from Charlie.
Yeah, I will say one thing. We mentioned it to him at the very end of that show, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like dying to know. Ran Carthon came from the 49ers. You cannot convince me that Kyle Shanahan would have ever considered drafting Will Levis. So I have to think that this is Vrabel just overthinking this thing and falling in love with a body and falling in love with an arm and just completely overlooking the actual data. I mean, I just keep going back to that Vanderbilt game. The dude had a 17 quarterback rating against Vanderbilt. It was the lowest quarterback rating of any starter in the SEC for the entire season. And he did it against Vanderbilt.
Typically not a powerhouse program.
It's mind-blowing. And I have to, like, Ran Carthon spent way too much time in the 49ers organization. I just can't see him sitting there watching that film and going, yeah, we need this guy. It had to be Vrabel.
So Mr. Jones said Levis got more DBs drafted than he did wide receivers.
He absolutely did.
Yeah. And Mr. Jones is right. He said Charlie is an honorary bro. You're exactly right. He sure is. That's exactly right. I like that. He knows what's up.
And again, bare minimum. Okay, let's say, just for giggles, let's say Will Levis and Hendon Hooker are both busts. Let's say neither one of them becomes anything, which is always possible. The NFL is a weird league. Guys play great, and you think this is going to be an amazing prospect, and then they do nothing in the NFL because it's all about fit. It's all about the organization you go to. Sorry.
Good times at Rustin's house right now. Well, I'm gonna put this comment up here because I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones said, imagine if the defense, speaking of Tennessee's defense, imagine if Tennessee's defense is improved and can get our offense more possessions. 100%. I mean, my goodness, they're already, it's a luxury as a Tennessee fan right now because it's almost, well, okay, let's think back to 2019 and 2020 when we were ecstatic if we got a first down. Like we were just happy to get a first down. Now it's odd if we don't score every possession. Like we think, oh, that was a bad possession. We didn't score, like it's like a fever dream we're in right now. It's wonderful. Yeah. It's absolutely wonderful that is the standard now. And he's right. If our defense is improved and can get off the field instead of allowing massive third down conversions, if they can get off the field, our offense is going to have the ball even more. He might be able to put in more numbers because they have the ball more. Rob has a great question here. Welcome, Rob. He said, but will Milton be able to get a softer touch on short passes? Well, we hope so. Time will tell. You know,
I just
he showed examples of that in the Orange Bowl.
yeah.
But you know, well, time will be the tell of that. And Mr. Jones made an interesting comment here. Well, he said this is a different one. He said we may score 100 a game. I mean, they 45 average of 45 points a game is 100% doable. I mean, we
Yeah.
saw them averaging that or more the last year. But he mentioned Nathan Leacock. So Rustin was listing off a bunch of people that are going to be plentiful targets for Joe Milton. And I think Nathan Leacock might get on the field some. I don't think he's going to be on the field a whole lot. I think you're going to see Ramel Keaton, Dante Thornton, Squirrel White, and Brew McCoy as the four receivers. Now, there is a Twitter account. I can't remember the name of it. It's like Big Game Sooner or something. It's some Oklahoma person. Something Sooner. I can't remember. And he always tweets out like the top 50 whatever coming into this season. Today he tweeted out the top 50 wide receivers entering the 2023 season. And there was only one Tennessee wide receiver on there, and it was Brew McCoy. And I'm sitting there thinking, Brew may not even have the most receptions and catching and receiving yards on the team this year.
Unfollow.
It's going to be, I mean, he might have the fourth most of anybody on the team. Ramel Keaton is going to shock people at how many catches he gets this next year. Squirrel White and Dante Thornton are going to be deep threats all day long. They're going to be, I mean, we saw that in the Vanderbilt and Orange Bowl, those two games with Joe Milton and Squirrel White. So Brew's going to get himself drafted just because he's a possession receiver. When you have to have a catch and you have to have somebody strong that goes up and gets it, that's who you're throwing it to.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, as far as the amount of catches and receiving yards, he might be fourth on the team, especially with receiving yards. He might have more catches than Squirrel or Dante, but I'm calling it right now. Ramel Keaton's going to lead the team in receptions and receiving yards this year.
He's going to see constant man coverage, and one guy can't guard Ramel Keaton when all those other guys are on the field. He's going to be flying around the field wide open all the time.
I agree. Keaton beat, and there you go. That's right. He said, Joe, just act like you're throwing to a kid on short throws.
So touch passes are nothing but footwork. And I don't see, I understand people are hesitant because of when he first got to Tennessee, but you've also got to understand he was coming out of a system at Michigan that was totally different. And so, he had to change all of his footwork. Michigan's teaching more of a pro style drop. They're worried about 5-7 step drops. Tennessee doesn't do that. Tennessee at most takes a 1, maybe a 3-step drop, but rarely ever do you even see the 3. It's usually a zone read fake and then stand up and hit the RPO, or it's a 1-step drop, find the open guy immediately, get rid of the ball. It's just different. And when I watch him play, his feet look great now. Joey Halsley spent a lot of time breaking down his feet, fixing it, getting him into this system. I don't see him struggling with short throws anymore. And I'm still surprised people bring that up because I don't see it happening. I think
time will tell this year.
I think the one ball that he does still struggle with, and I think again, it's a footwork issue. When he tries to throw the swing pass to backs out of the backfield, Michigan taught him to knock that dude down. Because that's Michigan's offense. They want to hit that guy in stride and let him just take off because it's typically not a screen. It's typically a check down. Whereas in Tennessee's offense, when he's throwing to a back out of the backfield, it's usually a screen, and they want it to have a little more touch on it. So he still struggles sometimes popping his feet and not just throwing a BB through that running back. I've seen that, but as far as the intermediate routes and the short balls, I just don't see him struggling with that. So anyway, what I was saying earlier, let's say Will Levis and Hendon Hooker are both busts. Let's say neither one of them pans out. They don't end up being any good in the pros. In 2 years, the Titans are opening a brand new stadium. They're spending billions on it. I can guarantee you Hendon Hooker jerseys are going to drastically outsell Will Levis jerseys. And at the end of the day, when you open a new stadium, you just need revenue. You need cash.
Yeah.
So it's the same issue, and Charlie brought it up on that podcast. If you're the Tennessee Titans, how do you not understand that you're second fiddle in the state of Tennessee? Like, why
Yeah.
is this complicated? Every year, it should just be an ultimatum in the organization. Every year, one of those 7 draft picks is going to be a Vol, because you need 5, 8 guys on the roster who are former Vols, and it's going to be amazing if they actually ever did that, how much they see that their ticket sales and their uniform sales go up in their pro shop and in their spirit store because they've got former Vols. Can you imagine how many jerseys Jawan Jennings would sell in Nashville?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's mind-blowing. And the fact that none of them can seem to ever figure this out. And honestly, with Vrabel, I think it's almost spite now. I think he does it because he's mad that he's not top dog in Tennessee, and just can't handle the fact that an NFL franchise can't overtake the state university. Because if you look in every other state in America, there's not another state where that issue exists. In every other state, the NFL franchise is the top dog. Tennessee is the only state where that's the case. And
in the Southeast, yeah.
I think if you look across the entire country, can you name me another state where the state university is more important than an NFL franchise? I can't come up with one.
No, the only one that I can get close to would be Georgia, but the Falcons, I think the Falcons would probably be more important. If
you look at sheer state revenue, the Falcons are more important.
Yeah. If you look at Florida, Northern Florida, in their heyday, Florida State might have been more important than the Dolphins, but in South Florida, the Dolphins are king, no doubt.
Yep. The only one I could come up with is maybe Clemson over the Carolina Panthers. But I mean, if you look at the rest, I mean, think about Vrabel. He's coming from New England. Nothing supersedes the Patriots.
No.
No. Even California, as big of a deal as USC is, they care more about their NFL franchises.
Especially after the Rams won the Super Bowl.
Right. Dallas. University of Texas is never going to overtake the Cowboys.
No, definitely not there. No.
And so I think Vrabel has an ego issue, and he struggles with the fact that the University of Tennessee is always going to be top dog, and it's just become a spite thing. It's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
You would think that the ownership and the powers that be, just sheerly for the money reason, would be like, no, we're taking at least one. Find one. You pick one, whichever one you want, but you're going to pick one every single year.
Well, I mean, my goodness, how many Hendon Hooker jerseys would have sold little kids in Tennessee over a Will Levis jersey? Yeah. And that there might actually be more Lions Hendon Hooker jerseys in Tennessee walking around than Will Levis jerseys.
How many Kansas City Chief Trey Smith jerseys do you see walking around? I mean, even in Tennessee, You see Trey Smith jerseys all over the place for the Chiefs.
Yep.
Kansas City's not stupid. This fall, they're going to have 3 former Vol offensive linemen on their offensive line depth chart.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Well, I think that's all our questions. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll through real quick just to make sure we got them all. The only 10 you see. Thank you so much. No doubt. Mr. Jones said Titans lost fans over Les pick. Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
absolutely.
Tons.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only 10 you see. Thank you so much for sending in those questions via email. That was absolutely fantastic. Anybody can send us in questions or anything like that. Anytime at the Vol Bros on pretty much any social media platform, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are at the Vol Bros on all of those things. You can email us at thevolbros@gmail.com if you have questions, and we'd love to answer. This is fun. This is the kind of stuff we love doing, just talking with you guys and answering questions. We love it when you chime in on the comments. That's awesome. And so we appreciate all of you joining us this evening. This has been a lot of fun. And we got big weekend coming up this weekend. Hosting number 17 Kentucky in Lindsey Nelson Stadium. The Lady Vols, they're probably done now. Did they win tonight?
No, they had weather issues and all the games got moved. They play Florida at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning on SEC Network.
Well, that stinks. So the Lady Vols. Oh no, okay, this is a good point. Rebecca in Company House, who said, "I don't really watch NFL, but I would have totally become a Titans fan had they drafted Hooker along with the rest of the state." 100.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, that is the sentiment I would agree with all over the place. I mean,
how
they
many
would have taken non-NFL fans and made them NFL fans if they had done that. Yeah, I agree.
How many number 18 Colts jerseys do you still see walking around the state of Tennessee on people who have never watched a football game in their life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's pretty good. Will Levis, too many L's in a road, and that's what he brings. Yep. Yep. Yeah. I mean, that could have been a huge moneymaker for him. And we know, obviously, it's not all about money. You got to win, but
I mean, in the NFL, it kind of is.
I think Hendon Hooker's a better quarterback than Will Levis anyway.
It's $1 billion industry. It kind of is all about the money there.
I mean, just look at touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, you got Hendon Hooker beats him by a mile. So huge weekend in Rocky Top. We got the last home series of the season hosting Kentucky. We got the Lady Vols playing in the SEC tournament. We got, I mean, that's a big weekend in and of itself right there. And so be on the lookout. I'm guessing maybe Sunday night. I don't know. We're going to go live sometime. So just be on the lookout on Twitter and YouTube, and you'll see the Facebook. You'll see the thing saying, "Hey, we're going to go live at this time." But we so appreciate everybody joining us. It's really cool seeing everybody join us like this. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun. A fun time to be a Vol, that's for sure. And so we hope everybody has a fantastic evening. Go Vols tomorrow, both softball and baseball in action. And so, keep chiming in with us. We'll keep you posted on what's going on in the games. But we hope everybody has a fantastic evening. I'm going to click the right buttons this time because I did not last time. If you want to just see a fun 10 seconds of awkward dead air, just go back and watch our last episode at the end because I hit the wrong button. So
live
action. Make sure. Yeah, exactly. It is truly live. So we hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and we will look forward to seeing everybody very soon.